For the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to give Ben Porfirio a couple of minutes to get here. Madam, well, no sense of doing roll call yet.
I don't even have a signage or roll call sheet. We can start and then mark the time when Commissioner Porfirio steps in.
Right. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Rogers?
Present.
Trustee Reinders? Present. Trustee Laha?
Present.
Trustee Fialco?
Present.
Trustee Pazmino?
Present.
Trustee Consolino?
Present.
And then Clerk Bozen will then do her own roll call.
Supervisor Ballard?
Brent is on his way. He'll be here shortly.
Trustee Conley?
Here.
Trustee Adolph? Here. Trustee Rivera?
Here.
And Trustee Vanello?
Here.
Mayor Yukich?
Here.
Council?
Present.
Got it. Okay. Vicki, you're all set with your roll call too then?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any seats up there for public comment?
Yes, you do.
I don't have any sheets, but I can go look.
Matt's got it.
Matt, you got him? Okay, so if anyone wanted to talk, now's the time to... Okay.
I'd love to know what the goal is, or like what is it that, like, I like to start with the end in mind. So what is our end in mind? We're trying to agree on what's
Well, at this time, we're having public comment, correct?
Oh,
No.
I'm so sorry.
No, public comments, we haven't started yet. I guess we could go into it. It's not going to interfere with the workshop. So Renee, you're up first. Yep.
Good evening. My name is Renee Sabin. I'm a 21-year Lockport resident and city council member, currently serving my second term. Excuse me. I reside and present the citizens of Lockport that live within the Homer Township. My ward borders Homer Glen on the east and on the south. For the past 20 years, the residents of my ward have paid very elevated property taxes to the Homer Township Highway Department, subsidizing Homer Glen's road and infrastructure needs. Last year, Homer Glen and Homer Township leadership publicly acknowledged this. Also stated and acknowledged the city of Lockport residents living within the boundaries of Homer Township make up around 30% of the equalized assessed value of the Homer Highway Department taxing district, which equals around 30% of the assets. I and other city council members and Lockport citizens expect to be reimbursed and to be sure that our residents don't get shortchanged.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Straight? Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Well, thanks for having us here today, George. Appreciate it. You know, Renee kind of summed it up quickly about what the problem is, and I think everyone here has acknowledged it. I know there's some new members here on the council too, and that's fine. But this is some dialogue that's been going on for a while about the compensation for the assets. As we saw the agenda tonight, you know, we saw that there was a possibility of Homer Glen taking over the village or the highway department's roads, or I know there's been some dispute with the commissioner about if they continue to exist, that maybe too many assets were taken and they need some of that equipment back. All that's fine, all that's, you know, debatable, and that's stuff for you folks to figure out. Our piece of this has always been the assets that were transferred that we needed to be compensated for. So while we've all agreed upon it in theory, you know, we submitted a letter about 2 weeks ago talking about what our finance director estimated those assets be, about $1.1 million. In a conversation with George just the other day talking about it, you know, he made a comment that like, I don't know if that's the right number. Honestly, these are numbers that reasonable people can have a discussion about. I have no problem with that, but we need to do it, and it just can't be up in the air anymore. Now, feel good about our finance director's numbers. She has a reason she came up with it, and certainly she can go over it with whatever committee, subcommittee, or groups that you assign to do this. But if there's a dispute and okay, you guys make good points, we can always come back on that number, but it's not an arbitrary number, that's for sure. Our folks worked hard to come up with that one, and it takes into account depreciation and all these other sorts of things for the assets. But we need to make sure this happens. I don't want to see another IGA happen between the Township Highway Department and the village without Lockport. It's as if there's 3 business partners who have been involved in this for years, but only 2 ever agree on this together, and the third party's always been left out, which is Lockport. When the assets were transferred, that was fine. You know, the new administration, or not new administration, but new council members came on. We've been patient to see how we can have this discussion further, but this needs to happen. And it needs to happen by the end of the month. I don't want this to go on and on and on. So I'm saying by the end of September, I'd like us to have had a discussion by then about these numbers and how a payment plan will be set up, how we do it, and how we go about it. That's the thing that I want to make clear tonight. Normally you guys don't see my face here because it's not my business, but this is our business when $1 million worth of our citizens' money is tied up in this. So by the end of September is what I'm looking for an agreement about how this gets paid and how we move forward. Whether you all discuss whether, you know, Homer Glen is taking care of all the roads in the township or not, that's for you to decide. I'm here representing our citizens for the funding that we're looking for.
Mayor, sorry, what was that number that you...
In the letter we submitted, we put at 1.179928. And we're happy to give this to anyone who needs it. And if there's, you know, any questions, you guys know how to get a hold of me. But this is something we are taking seriously, and we want to make sure that this happens. All right.
Matt, do we have the paper that he's...
Yes, we do.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Mr. Benson.
I would just like to state for the record, Commissioner Portfolio has entered the building at 5:37.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you. I've been my share of public meetings, and I don't want to repeat everything that's been repeated. But we are looking for action on this, and one of the ideas that the mayor also had is, do we need to get an arbiter involved? Is that something that these bodies would be willing to do, to sit down? You know, how do we facilitate this understanding? I don't think anyone disputes the arrangement that has happened has been unfair. So how do we get a resolution to this? So I just want to put on the record that we're open to sit down with anyone, anytime. It should be all the parties involved. And if we need an outside party to help facilitate the conversation, I think that would behoove all of us. So.
I agree. Roy Adcock?
We need our name and address, or just our name, or?
No, we know who you are, right?
You know you know where I live, huh? My name is Roy Adcock. I just had a couple things to add into this, and one of them, I want to thank Homer Glen. And I'm hoping that our Homer Township board who was there was taking notes at the way the lady in the blue was answering questions. What a concept. What a concept. Take notes, Homer Township. The other thing I'd like to mention is, if this IGA does that mean that Homer Glen would decide the rates then? Are we all out of this then? It's going to be a lot of things that's going to be happening here. Because we look back at, right before all this took place, our subdivision had a meeting with Steve Ballich, and we sat in his administration office, I guess you'd call it that, or his campaign headquarters, when we were told, there was probably a dozen homeowners sitting in his office when he said, I'm not going to pursue the lawsuit. I'm dropping the lawsuit. We don't need to waste that money because I got my people are in Homer Glen. They're on the board. So we don't have to worry about it. We're going to get all that equipment. I'm just going to tell them, We're gonna get the equipment. We're gonna get those buildings. We're gonna get everything that Homer Township needs to make us perfect. And here we are, months later, going into an IGA. And I find that very interesting, how we went from, we're gonna get whatever we need, to going into an IGA. And I don't know who's taking minutes, but I want that put into the minutes, that Steve Ballard told everybody, don't worry. My people are over there at Homer Glen. I don't know who they are over at Homer Glen, but evidently that's not the case. So this is something that Homer Township was, we all paid for these roads. We all paid for the equipment, including Lockport. Everybody paid for this stuff. It wasn't just Homer Glen. We're not going to get into that he said, she said, you paid, I paid. We need to work together. But we were left told, don't worry, it's all taken care of. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And we were just going to get all the equipment. I hear we got 2 trucks out of the deal, and one of them can't even plow snow without making multiple trips back and forth just to do one subdivision. And now we want to have all the employees go over there? I just heard about this at the last minute. So there's a lot of things that we need to be looking at. This can work, but there's something missing in all of this. So I think we can all work together, but I don't think we need to be rushing into something, because IGAs take a lot of time. As ourselves from our board, from the sanitary, it took a long time to make our agreement with the city of Lockport. And it is working. We have ups and downs, I admit it, but it does work. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Roy. That's it for public comment. We can start on workshop. Who's gonna?
Could we start maybe with Brent Portfolio?
What are we starting with? Discussion of the transfer of Homer Township Road District employees to the Village of Homer Glen's Public Works Department, or discussion of IGA with Homer Township for the Village of Homer Glen and maintain unincorporated Homer Township roads. There's nothing on here about Brent, so.
Well, you said discussion. The workshop starts with people, so I figured, Brent, well, how about we start with you, Mayor, you could give your input to that subject. Item number 1.
Well, we've got the IGA here. I'd like the lawyer to put some of the stuff forward because he's the one that's got everything written up and marked on it, and we make sure that everybody else knows exactly what it is. I'm not the lawyer here, so.
Yeah, maybe a good place to start would be the IGA itself. I mean, I know that's number 2 on here, but obviously that dovetails into the employee situation as well. I think all of you have a copy. Hopefully that's been distributed. Does everybody have a copy of that? And to trustee, I'm sorry, I don't hear anything.
That's okay, my name is
What is it?
Angela.
Angela. To her comment, she wanted to know where are we going, or what's the goal, if you will.
Right.
Tonight at the last village board meeting, it was discussed about the idea of the Village of Homer Glen taking over the maintenance of those 18 miles. And the trustees asked that I put together a draft, an initial IGA that we can share with everybody. We can have a workshop, we can talk about that and see where we go from there, whether it's something that makes sense. So I think in terms of what the goal is tonight is to get all the input from both the township, highway commissioner, the village, and see if this is something that will work. What do we need to do to put it together? What kind of things do we need to iron out? And go from there.
I think a better way maybe to start our workshop would be to give each representative at least 1 minute to give a little piece of their input, and then we can start the workshop. That way it would address everybody, such as Angela, instead of you kind of guiding at this point. I think the input from each trustee on both sides, and from the supervisor, Ballage, and from Road District Commissioner Portfolio and the mayor, everybody give their up to 3-minute piece of information that they'd like to give, and then we'd have a better foundation to start with. And if maybe we could start with Supervisor Balich, and then just work our way
All right,
clockwise.
one thing I'd like to make sure, no one talk over anyone else.
Yes,
All
sir.
right? Everyone's got to listen, then you can put your 2 cents in.
And please speak directly into your microphone.
All right, the first thing I want to say is a lawsuit is not off the table. If things don't work out right here, we will have a lawsuit. Whether Brent wants it or not, he's the road district. He can sue, and so can the township. So there could be 2 lawsuits. But if I sue, I guarantee you that the things that happen will be brought out, and we will win. So just so everybody's aware that we will win the lawsuit. We represent not only Homer, but we represent Lockport, part of the New Lenox, and part of Lamont. And I don't think anybody in our districts want to see a lawsuit because of the cost of it. It's a lot of money. That's why I dropped the lawsuit. Unlike what Mr. whatever his name is said, that wasn't because of anything else other than the cost. I made that real clear. It was a waste of money, in my opinion, because I looked at the lawsuit and I read it, and the merits were not there to win the right way, quickly and easily. But I know the right merits. I know what the case could be. But I don't want to go through that because it would cost our taxpayers too much money. And the people in Lockport, they don't want it. The people in Homer Glen don't want that. The people in New Lenox or Lamont don't want it. And I live in the Orland Park part of it. And people where I live don't want that. But you know what? I read this here IGA, and I look at it like, I'm glad that Mr. Frizzalone is, not Frizzalone, oh my God, Fialco. Mr. Fialco's doing a good job, and we're going to go over each one of these, and hopefully we can address each one of these line items here, because pretty much 95% of it is garbage. So I'm looking at it like we can get it done. We just have to start from scratch, just going through each line and changing it. And I'm sure that that's what both boards want, because we got to remember, Homer Glen represents Homer Glen. This is a pure Homer Glen piece of work. But it doesn't realize that this is so bad that anybody else that signs something like this, they'd rot in hell for signing it. And that sure in hell ain't going to be me. I ain't going there. So I'm assuming that we're going to go start at the beginning and start with each one of these whereases and go all the way down through the 20 pages and change all this stuff so that we all agree. And I'm not saying that we have, the township is going to agree to everything, you're going to agree, but we have to have a starting point. So once we get a starting point, then we have a document that we can negotiate and get down to it. And we could probably even get to a finished product today. But everyone's got to be willing to look at it and be open-minded. And I'll be open-minded. I promise you, I'll be open-minded. Because I want to see this get done. But like I said, it's the road commissioner, it's Mr. Porfilio. He's in charge of the road. I'm in charge, I'm the treasurer for the township. We both represent all the cities within there, and we have to make sure that we don't screw anybody. You guys just have to worry about the village. But since you live in this area, you live in Homer, when you're dealing with roads, you're dealing with the lives of everybody, because the roads that the township takes care of are roads that people in Lockport and Homer Glen and the Unincorporated and Lamont and New Lenox all use. So I'm confident under Mr. Fialco, we're going to be able to take the time, which will be a lot of time, to get this done and finish today. Thank you.
In the interest of time, if we could try to keep our comments around 2 minutes, maybe 3 at the maximum, because we've got a long night ahead of us, that would be appreciated.
I agree. Well, Brent?
Thanks for taking all my time. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. I hope we get everything accomplished we want to tonight. We'll see how that goes. Just like they set a table at a restaurant, I'm trying to set the table tonight for the IGA on what I'm speaking on behalf of the entire road district. And the levy that I have every December that's sent to everybody in Homer Township affects not only Homer Glen, but, you know, it affects a lot of other municipalities, Lockport, of course, that's represented tonight too, and New Lenox, and Lamont. And I want to be fair to everybody. I don't want to be biased to one municipality over another. That's not the way I work. So what I'm trying to accomplish is what we all want, which is the bottom line is to lower the taxes for residents in Homer Glen. That's what I'm trying to do tonight, and I'm trying to provide the best avenue for that. However that works out, it works out. As all of you know, about 63% of the tax levy for the township is paid by Homer Glen. There's been a lot of, there's been presentations, I think, in Homer Glen last October that provided those facts. And there's lots of numbers that were presented that night. I think it was the 6th and the 10th of October. I could be wrong. And they get back, of course, almost half of that from the road district. So that's something that you have to understand is if the road district levies a tax to run the 21 miles, that means that the Homer Glen residents are not going to pay for the whole boat. They're going to be helped by the rest of the township, rather than just Homer Glen levying a municipal tax for the public works. That would probably end up with more. I crunched some numbers and I'll talk about it later, but so that's the first thing is we want to see which option of the IGA lowers the taxes the most for the Homer Glen residents and overall for the township. And the second thing I wanted to bring up real quick is there's 2 staff that I have at the road district. One is an admin, one is a laborer. They stayed behind from the old road district for me, and they put their trust in me. And as far as I'm concerned, I do not want to push them off on the Public Works Department because of a lot of rumors and hearsay and a lot of bad things that have been said about them, and they're not going to last very long over there. So I would like to keep them as a skeleton staff for day-to-day operations, and the maintenance and heavy lifting will be done by Homer Glen, which is the snow removal, the salting, the tree trimming, and the mowing, and large projects. And that's my basic suggestions. Thank you.
If I could just take a minute, if you have a microphone in front of you, if you could please lift it up and switch it to the on-off, because there is a feedback that we're not going to be able to hear, that will overpower the recording. So if you just lift up your microphone, switch it to on-off position. Okay, sorry, thank you.
Was I loud enough?
It was, but when you speak, there's an echo in the background, and then it will ruin the recording, so.
You want me to go back there?
No, we're good.
Okay, so I guess it would be my turn right now. There's a lot of things that we have to find out and get straight on the information that we're putting out there. Right now, all we're talking about is the road district to who's going to maintain unincorporated Homer Township roads. Right now, I don't know if that has anything to do with cutting of the grass that you had mentioned a few minutes ago. And as for the township, there are only 18 miles in it. I got a hold of IDOT. IDOT did all the calculations for me. And John Basic from IDOT said that there are 18, maybe 18.2 miles, no more than that. Our guy looked up, I don't have those papers in front of me, looked it up, but somehow a couple streets from Homer Glen and a couple streets from Lockport got added into the calculation. So it's not 21.6, it is going to be 18 miles that we're working on. As for the taxes, it's when we first started this endeavor to take over the road district, we had said to Pam, she was supervisor at the time, that we would take over the road district, including the township area,
And we told her the same thing I've told everyone else. We'll do it for free. So if that's the case, there is no tax. The tax goes away. So hitting that button for the tax that unfortunately comes through with Lamont, Lockport, and who else? New Lenox. We've already said we'll be more than happy to take care of it. We've been saying that for the last few years. I want to sit down, I want to figure out what we are paying. We'll make sure everything's straight with every single solitary village that, and it's the town, or the Homer Glen did not create this problem. The road district started this problem. And we'll make amends on it, and we'll get this thing straightened out. And like I said, I've talked to the board, my board, when this all happened, and we all agreed that we would not charge to do the township. So this throwing it around that the taxes are going to be too high for the residents, we're the ones that are going to be taking it back off, and it really wasn't there for us to pay, but it's the right thing to do. So that's my goal on this, is just to make sure that we can get this, take care of all the residents that are in this village that expect us to do what we're going to do, and I know we can do it. So unfortunately, we got to wait a year to see what happens, because this will be the first time for us to do this. But I know we have an absolutely wonderful public works crew that are ready to bust the rear ends for us and the township. And I'm very happy to see that they're with us. So that's my goal on that.
Or how about the village attorney, since he's the one that...
Well,
how about if you let me go ahead and do that? We'll do the trustees first. So Jennifer, you can speak up now, or Norma Ray, whatever you want.
Are you sure you're done?
First of all, I just received this today, so I'm not comfortable with it at all. Second of all, I think that when we're talking about discussing an IGA, Mayor Straight had a very good point. Why aren't we discussing this with input from all of these other villages? I have a lot of questions. We only have a few minutes.
Excuse me, I can't hear you. Can you take your mask down a little bit?
Why, thank you, sir. No, I have a lot of questions. I only have a couple minutes. It's not worth getting angry on. I don't have enough information here, and your IDOT numbers, until I see something in print that is certified and proof, I don't believe anything that's being said on the stand right now. I want input from the other townships, villages involved, New Lenox, Lockport, Lamont. I think that's fair. Money is owed here. I'm very disgusted that we haven't been able to work on an agreement for many months. I think time is of the essence. However, I don't think that anything should be rushed. I think there should be a proper agreement, proper compensation. Nothing with the township is being taken into consideration whatsoever with what they need to actually handle maintenance on what is still left with them. And until that's done properly, I was assuming tonight that we would have actual discussion where we could hash something out, but I can tell clearly from the way that this meeting is already being presented that that's not going to happen. So I'm just going to let this move along. And I'm done.
Mayor, don't forget you have trustee Reinders on the phone as well.
Pardon me?
You have trustee Reinders as well, just to remind you.
Rose, can you hear us? Rose, can you hear us? Rose, are you there? We'll go with trustee Pasmino. We'll come back to you, Rose. If you're having a hard time, we'll come back to you.
Thank you, sir. With myself, just like any other transition or takeover, like what's happened with the road district, there's always going to be bits and pieces that are left. And unfortunately, those bits and pieces are the ones that scream the loudest, at this point. It's never a clean cut. Homer Glen got what they needed. They got what they solicited for via loophole, if you ask me. But at the end of the day, we live in Homer Township. We have to make sure that they don't fail. It's not just about the village, it's about everybody. We use those roads, and we have to make sure that they're maintained and taken care of. So I think that during this meeting, it's very important, and that was my hope today, that we would sit here and not get up from these tables until we figure it out where both parties are happy with the solution, or at least 99.9% of it. So I do think that Trustee Consolino had a good point. You know, there are other jurisdictions that are involved in this monetarily. I mean, we want to take care of everybody, and we want to make sure that we pay for what we took. And if they have something coming to them, it's negotiated, and it's, you know, it's seen that it's taken care of. That's just the right thing to do. So that's what I'm hoping to get out of this meeting today.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Trustee Rogers.
I want to go in clockwise.
No, I can mix it up, can I?
I'd rather just go clockwise and everybody take a turn.
Oh, my God.
That's the way we started, right?
Trustee Rogers?
I'm fine with Mr. Fielko going. Go ahead. This is getting ridiculous, but I agree with Jennifer. It is hard because we just got this today, but I feel like I have a good grip on it. Just a couple of like brief comments. I agree with Mr. Portfolio that the two people who are there should stay there because we still need a face for the unincorporated people, or that whatever's left over there. And so I agree with that. The funds need to be allocated to leave there. So the levy under 5A, I understand that number's going to have to come from somewhere. I don't think we're going to get that number today, though, Ruben. But I agree with Ruben too. Today, there's no reason why we can't figure this out today. We don't have to go through every single thing. Most of it is just definitions. Relative to 5.6 and the employment again, I would, you know, I think that we need to survey the current employees of the facilities that we have, that the village has, and the public works that we have, to see if we take these 18 miles over, where's the need? Where are we going to need people? Is it laborers? Is it another admin person? So I think it's important that we get their input on that. And in that same survey, I'd like to see some language relative to the parks that we're potentially taking over as well. What do they anticipate the need to be there? Because I'm hearing different stories on what needs to be done. 8A, the 2 years, my initial gut was I felt like it should be 3. So it's kind of a little bit longer. 2 years goes by very fast, and it's hard to see if things are working, but it's definitely not a deal killer for me. It doesn't matter to me. It's just my 2 cents on it. But overall, I mean, it seems pretty cut and dry. There's really just 8 pages here. The rest of it is just definitions, so that's all I have.
Trustee Laha.
All right. Well, first of all, I'm happy that we're all sitting here in this room. I think it's long overdue. Sorry. I think it's long overdue, so I'm really happy to see us in here trying to make some progress, taking some steps towards what's right for both the township and for the village. I think that we need to keep our residents in mind and forefront when we're making our decisions. With that being said, I agree with what Beth and Jennifer said. We just got this today. I'm still reading through it, trying to go with a fine-tooth comb. Some questions I had going through was there proof of 21.6 versus 18 miles? That was a question I had, so I know we addressed it, but same thing. Also, employees needed on the village. If we're going to take these 18 miles, how many would we need, and what type of situation do we need to be in to maintain a healthy road district? Healthy. I think that's something really important to keep in mind, is not putting ourselves short as well, but making sure that the township residents are also getting what they deserve. Also, Steve, you had said that you read through this and there were things that, most of the things you did not like. What are some things that you would like to see happen? So I'm with Trustee Fielko and Ruben, and I would like to see some progress tonight. I would like to get things done and moving. I'm an action person, and I think we have, we're smart people. We've got everything we need. I think we can all work together and make something happen. What would you like to see different?
Probably one of the biggest things is we don't believe that we want to just get rid of the district completely, that it's more cost effective for us to have a skeleton crew like we have now, and then so that Homer Glen doesn't get screwed when it's a super bad winter, or we get screwed when it's a super nice winter. We figured that we should be paying time and material for any work done by Homer Glen, and that the work that Homer Glen would be doing would be basically snow plowing, tree cutting, cutting the grass, the jobs that we don't have the equipment for. The stuff that we have the equipment for, the small jobs, we can take care of with our crew. And that way Homer Glen isn't bothered with that small stuff, and anything Homer Glen does, they get paid time and material for, so that nobody is ever burned at the end of the year. So that's a real important thing. And then the other thing in here, it says that they want all the tax dollars. Well, we have 4 other cities involved here. Why would we give anybody all the tax dollars? Because we're going to, in our mind, we want to maintain a skeleton crew, answer the calls that we get, and then the stuff that we can't do, that we need the equipment for in Exhibit D that we presented, was so that we could get all the work done. But if the village keeps all that stuff, we wanted to retain title to that stuff, so that 5 years or 10 years from now, if everybody here is gone, and the village says we don't want to do it no more, well then at least the road district that's there has the equipment and the building and the land to just do it. It wouldn't be the same, but they could at least function. The way it is in here, we wouldn't have any of that. So if the thing was dissolved, now how are the roads going to get done?
Yeah, that was something that I missed when I was talking before, was something we said a long time ago, was the surplus equipment and property we want back. It was not transferred in the correct way according to the Illinois Highway Code. We want it back, because if something happens with this IGA in a year or 3 years or 5 years, the road district has nothing to protect themselves. They're out in the middle of the desert, like Homer Glen used to be, with nothing, and they had to depend on the road district. Now us, we would have nothing. So that's something that should be in there as well. Thank you.
And it's kind of just more of like a safety net, is what you're trying to say, is if this doesn't work out the way that we want it to, it would be something like that. Because eventually when these towns, if we annex their roads back into their towns or their districts, if it falls below a certain amount of miles, then it's done.
Well, the way I'm looking at it is, I live in Homer Glen. I don't want to pay extra taxes that I don't have to. I also represent the township, and I don't want to see anyone in the township suffer because of us. And I really believe that we can fix the situation real simple. It's very simple. We just have a skeleton crew. We pay time and material for whatever's done, which is like 90% of the work. The hard stuff, the village will be doing, and we pay time and material. So the village is never going to be screwed, and the township will always have their work done. And going forward, I don't see any reason in the future somebody would say this is a dumb thing, let's drop it. But you just don't know. Politics is a weird thing. So going forward, it's important that if something did go wrong, that the township can walk away, not whole, it definitely ain't whole, but it's walking away with a basic skeleton system that it can operate and do those roads. And let's face it, if Homer Glen doesn't do it, we have to figure a way of doing it. So do we go out and we hire somebody till we can get trucks? Do we go out and rent a pole barn somewhere to store our stuff? Because by state law, we have to have all our equipment inside. Do we see if we can make a deal with Lockport to do some of the roads? Do we call up Lamont and beg them to help us? This is where we're at. And all this happened because one guy decided to make a deal with the mayor 4 years ago and give everything to Homer Glen. Our taxes went up about $1 million 3 times. to make all this happen, to get the best road district in the world, and it's better than the county road district, built over here, which is fine. I don't have a problem with all that. But at the same time, the court took everything and gave us nothing. So we had enough at one point to do our roads. Now we don't have enough to do our roads, and we have to come to this type of a meeting to get the equipment we need to do the job that we always were able to do all these years. So that's what's frustrating to me.
All right.
So, I mean, but go through the thing, when we start, everyone will see. But them are I think, the high points.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I have a couple of questions. Oh, that's for last. Go ahead.
Well, we're going to have the other trustees talk too.
What trustees? All right, that's fine. We can do that. I'm looking at, I think this is a quorum.
I believe everybody in here is correct. Everybody's has said something tonight. I believe everybody is correct in what they said. Everybody's got valid points. And Nicole, the questions you asked Steve, I thought it brought up stuff that was very important. Everybody's input is valuable. And we have to remember how we got here. Again, we have two different bodies of government who are different now than they were in October of 2020. The effort has been made for a long time. It's almost been a year. We have bad weather coming this way, and we have no resolution. So that's why this meeting was called for. And it wasn't for us as the village to tell the township, you're not going to get that because we're the village, and it's not for the township to say to the village, well, we can't do that. It's to mesh things together. And I had asked for that to take place at the last meeting. I asked our lawyer, Eric, to take the IGA that the township had passed on August 9th and to blend it into an IGA with ours so it made sense on both sides. As you can see, that is not the case at this point. Going through each item one at a time and making sure we come up with a plan that's equitable for both sides. We have to keep in mind here, this is not about the township, this is not about the village. It is about the taxpayer, the people of this community. So I don't even like to hear the township village. It's taxpayer, resident. That is who we need to focus on here. And as we go through each item, one item at a time, it is up to the trustees here. We are the board. The trustees here on the township side and on the village side, there is no reason why we can't go through this one line at a time and come to some agreement. And then Eric, you can take what we give you and you can put it into a document. And then once we agree to the way you prepare that document, we can then have the lawyer on the township side go over it and make sure they're good with it. Once both sides are good with it, we can put it to a vote at a regular meeting. But the way this was put together kind of didn't help out the situation today at all. And I'm a little bit disappointed by that. So I'm willing to work into the midnight hour to make this happen today if I have to. There is no reason, just like Trustee Laha said, that we can't get going on this. And Trustee Rogers and Trustee Pazmino, we can get working on this, and that is where I'm at with it. Thank you.
Okay, a few things. Well,
you got Trustee Reinders too, don't forget.
Rose, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. What we're talking about right now is a discussion of the IGA with Homer Township for the Village of Homer Glen to maintain unincorporated Homer Township roads. That's where we're at right now.
Okay, well, one of the things that I would really like to stress is that there was no remedy through the courts to remedy this whole situation, and I really believe that that's where the problem lies. But now that it's in our hands, I think maybe we should go back and take a look at it and look at what it's going to take for the township to work. I think it was very unfair for them to be left with nothing or just basically bare bones, because they have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of the township just as well as we do to the village. So I really hopefully believe that we could come to some resolution on this tonight. I don't want to see anybody suffer. I don't want our residents to have to pay for this for free. I believe that we really need to come to a resolution where we are reimbursed for the work, and there's got to be some type of contingency plan, because we don't know what the future is going to hold for the next mayor, the next board, and they need to be protected as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Rose. In response to that, if the village has already agreed, and the only reason the township didn't get involved in it is we had offered Pam to be able to do the township. She turned it down. So there's not a thing that we could do about it. We pushed as hard as we could, and she said it was her property. She's going to do it the way she wants to do it. When Steve came in, I sat down with Steve and I told him the same thing I told Pam. We will take care of the township roads. They don't have to pay a tax on it. I told them to close up that account because that account is what screwed us up in the first place. If we didn't have that account open, the money wouldn't have been there for Lamont, Lockport, Homer Glen, and New Lenox. So we open it up again anyhow, and now the money has to be divvied, and as far as I know, it hasn't. The money that we've gotten so far hasn't been divvied back to the other three groups. But when we do it, the tax would go away because we are doing it for free. So we would make sure that everyone was covered, because I'm not talking just about Homer Glen. I'm talking about the whole Homer Township, and we happen to be in it. But something has to be done soon, because it is, and snow is coming, and right now, like I said, we had it on the table. We said we would take care of it. I sat down with Steve and told him about it. I also sat down with Steve and told him about the 18 miles, and I've told a lot of people it's 18 miles. I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but I called IDOT, and that's what they printed it out, and they said it's been 18 miles, and it's been 18 miles for years and years and years. So that's a real easy fix. It's at 18 miles. We'll take care of the 18 miles. It doesn't cost anyone. The village will handle it. I don't know what else to say. When we looked into this at first, we knew we were brand new with this. We know we have to have some time to make sure we get it straight. And as of what happens when the mayor's gone, well, there's going to be a new mayor. And then 4 years later, there's going to be another election, possibly another mayor. It doesn't make a difference. The whole world is done with changeover of policies. All the politicians that run, some win, some lose, and some start over, and some end. So if we're thinking we're going to find someone that's going to forever, ever make sure that this is all they do, I don't think it's possible.
Excuse me, Mayor, can we please have the township trustee?
We're going to do that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there. Go ahead and make your calls, because I'm not sure who's.
Trustee Conley, did you have any comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the township has what it needs to operate successfully and not just lose everything and just be left sitting out there in the dark. That's all my goal is for tonight.
So I think that we probably are all in agreement that we want to do the right thing. It's kind of coming to that understanding on what that means for different entities. I live in Lockport and also in Homer Township, so I don't know if that matters to anyone, but I understand the complexity of it, and I always tell people I get to pay all the taxes. So I understand why people are frustrated with that, but I'm desperately trying to wrap my mind around, it seems, so what I'm hearing is Homer Glen is saying that they would take over the road district, maintenance, plowing, all of it. When I read this, that's what I'm seeing. And I always worry that I misunderstand, so I like to ask questions. So am I understanding that correctly, that the village is saying, for argument's sake, I don't know if it's 18 or 21. Let's say it's 21.
Let's say it's 18.
Okay, that's fine. But are you willing to, so you're saying that if it is 18, if it turns out to be 21, the village would be covering all of those miles for maintenance?
We'll cover whatever it is.
Yes, one of the problems, and I don't want to take away from the township, all of you to state your comments as well, but I think it was a little premature to have everybody give their comments and stuff before I went into the
Point of
agreement.
order, I don't think it's appropriate for the attorney to be given his opinion. Should be the board members and the mayor and the super.
I was asked a que- I was asked,
I don't think it's appropriate, so.
Is that appropriate for me to answer a question?
Unless you're asked.
Mike.
Check Robert's rules.
I'm not arguing the 21 versus 18. I'm really not. What I'm trying to say is, I want to make sure I'm hearing.
that is how this contract draft is written.
That's how I'm reading it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then, but the concern on the township, from what I'm hearing, is they don't want all of the equipment and the personnel to be dissolved. I think that I'm understanding, like, that's kind of where we're at. I don't know if anyone else is hearing different things, but that's what I heard. So, I mean, I don't have any more comments besides that, really. I just, again, my goal for this evening, I'd like to see progress. I'm not sure why we couldn't figure something out. And so my goal would be like just to try to understand where we are and where we might be able to come to a resolution.
Trustee Rivera?
Don't want to sound like a broken record. Basically, everything was already stated out here. We're hearing from Lockport, and we have other jurisdictions that are around us that, yes, they should all be brought to the table and talk about this. It is something that kind of blew right past me also, not even thinking about them as well. So that's all I got to say.
Just want to wish everybody good evening. And what I'd like to say is, first of all, the passion in this room is amazing. I mean, everyone who's been elected in the last 2 elections, whatever, everyone here has a solid grip on this village, township, whatever, and they care. And it's very obvious. And I'm really proud of everybody, the way they're asserting themselves and, passing their narrative. I've lived in this area for almost 20 years. I want to see us work together. I want to make sure our roads are plowed, are taken care of, and however we do this, it should be done in the right way. Brent was elected as the Township Highway Commissioner for our road district. I trust him. Me and Rob talk a lot about different things, and his credentials are amazing. And I think what he says is, in my opinion, is solid, and he should be listened to. What I worry about most is down the road lawsuits. And we went through a terrible lawsuit. We ended it. We may be going into another one. You have Lockport who may engage now because they're expecting something that is owed to them. If they don't, we have another lawsuit. New Lenox, Lamont. So somehow, some way, we have to figure this thing out. And again, it's about the taxpayers. It has nothing to do with us. They voted for us to represent them, and we need to do this the right way. All right, with no cost, we have to do this right. So, again, everyone here cares a lot about this community. Everyone has businesses here, has worked here, sports, whatever. But I think by the time this evening is over, we should be able to shake hands and get a deal done and make this thing work for everybody, especially for the taxpayers of Homer Glen, Homer Township, and the surrounding communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right, that's what we have going for right now on that. So where do we go from here?
If I can have the floor, that's all right.
Yes, you can have the floor.
Just wanted to go through the agreement, although I understand your disappointment, Trustee Fialco. What I've tried to do here, and again, this is a starting point. This is a beginning IGA, something that we can at least work from and go through it as Supervisor Ballard said, piece by piece. That's fine. However, what we're looking at here is, my understanding was that the village would be taking over the 18 miles in terms of the maintenance and operations, as the township trustee made the reference to. That was my understanding in putting this together. If that's not the case, fine, we can address it. But I think it's a difficult situation to go through the agreement, basically say this is ridiculous or this is garbage because this isn't what we agreed to, or this isn't what we're going to agree to. This is a starting point. And if it's a situation where the township is not going to turn over all the maintenance, if they're just simply going to use the village to do the heavy lifting, then obviously it's going to be revised, it's going to be redrafted, there's going to be some things that change in it. But my understanding from the discussion on Wednesday night was in terms of putting together an IGA that addressed the village maintaining those 1821. It really doesn't matter because all of those roads would be included in this contract, but maintaining those fully. So I just want to get started with that. We can go through this. I want to be able to give you a reason as to why I have this in here or what I don't have in the contract, those sorts of things. So it was a very simple, straightforward way of looking at it. The whereas clauses. Essentially, what I've tried to do here is give a history of what was going on between the township and the village going back to 2003, I believe is it 2003?
Yeah.
Yes, when it was originally taken care of, the original intergovernmental agreement. So we go through that. I don't think we have to go through each of the whereas clauses unless anybody really wants to. Yes.
Could I ask you one question? Do you have a copy of the IGA that the township approved on August 9th?
I believe.
No, I'm asking Eric if he has a copy of it.
Yeah, I believe I do.
Okay. This is where I was a little disappointed was we had asked that you blend them, and I know I want you to continue on, but just to add to what you said is I didn't see anywhere in there where you actually took verbiage from their IGA and blended it with ours.
Absolutely not.
And that is where I was disappointed.
Well, quite frankly, Trustee, the township, that agreement, that version of that agreement, essentially had nothing to do with us maintaining the 18 miles of roadway.
Eric, all I can tell you is what you drew up there is the old, you even referred to it as the second edition or the second part of. We want to get away from what we originally had, Eric, and we want to resolve the problem by starting off with the first one and then calling it, edition 2. Isn't making progress. And so we want to make progress tonight. And by taking just the old thing and kind of re-presenting it and maybe changing one or two things is not heading us in the right direction. The trustees here need to go through together, one item at a time, what's important. We'll give you that information. You can put it into the IGA, and then we can all decide that that's what we want as trustees.
Can I walk you through it, please?
I understand, but you said...
Wait, he's got the floor right now. And he had the floor.
I answered your question. I just would like to walk you through it, please.
Okay.
I mean, you're asking me to blend something together. That IGA that was presented to us basically did not encompass anything that you've asked me to do here tonight. It did not encompass anything related to us, the village, maintaining the 18 miles. It did not. It talked about... And I'll show you where it does give some of it, where I do blend it. I'll point it out to you in just a few minutes. Let me go through the thing. And also, in terms of the second amended, it's for clarification so that there's no question when I give you the history of this. It isn't so we can regress or do anything like that. It's so that we can move forward and do progress, because this is showing that this is a new amendment, this is an entirely new agreement, and this is the one that would take precedence. So I'm going through basically the history of it, simply just point out where we are in terms of what agreement we're working on. Sure.
Question, I was under...
Wait, can he please finish, and then I'll let everyone do it at this...
I just wanted to ask, all right.
Let me go through the agreement, and then obviously we can take questions and comments afterwards, because obviously there's going to be quite a few, it seems like. What I pointed out, I'm looking at page 2 on the second whereas clause, talking about the amended and restated intergovernmental agreement. This is the agreement that took place, that was passed last year in December, that essentially transferred the maintenance of the Glen Incorporated roads back to Glen, and it said the township is going to maintain its roads, the unincorporated roads. And it also transferred property, it transferred real property, it transferred personal property. That, just to make sure that we're all clear that there's no misunderstanding, the court approved that agreement. The court found that it was legal, so there is nothing at all right now that's either pending, but also the issue has been adjudicated. It's been to court. The court found that, yes, this was properly done. The road commissioner was authorized to do it. The village was authorized to enter into this agreement. So the previous IGA that we had talked about the highway commissioner retaining property and retaining these items and things of that nature. Those items, just to make sure for clarification, the real property has been transferred. It has already been done. So anything going forward is going to be a transfer back. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. There's no retention of items. And then for the personal property, despite the fact that hold the post, please, Mr. Supervisor, with all due respect, I would simply ask that you wait for me to go through.
You said something wrong, so I wanted to...
I'm sure that I have said plenty of things wrong. You can correct me when I'm done, please.
Okay.
The idea that then the items, the personal property items, those items, also, the titles haven't been signed, but we're in a position right now that the court has said those personal property items belong to the village of Homer Glen. That's what a court has decided. Okay, so we've been through the litigation aspect and we won. So that's what we're looking at here. And that's why I include this in the agreement, because it's obviously stating for the fact that this is what happened under that previous agreement. Now what we're doing here is going to change that. That's the whole point of that we're looking to amend it. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th whereas, where it says, under the second amended agreement, the village maintained and responsible for the 18 miles of roadway. Again, what we're talking about here is, my understanding was the village wanted to take over the full maintenance. So obviously this is going to change. If there's going to be a skeleton crew, if there's going to continue to be somebody for the township that does some of the minor work, that's fine, we can change that. We can move on to the heart of the agreement now. Section 1 it incorporates those whereas clauses. Section 2 basically states that this is restating that old agreement. We're changing things. Section 3 talks about the village assuming maintenance and regulatory authority over the road district system. So if that's not the case, we can change that. We can identify what items of maintenance we're going to be responsible for versus what the township is going to be responsible for.
The regulatory authority, I don't like that in there.
Okay.
Just make a note of it.
Okay. Yep. And again, nobody should be offended when they read this agreement. It's a starting point. I mean, this is just a situation where we put it out there and we talk about it and we work through it. That was the reason for the workshop. Anything else? I will ask you this, Mr. Porfirio. Oh, I'll just back up. I'll move on and then we can go through each of these. Maintenance infrastructure responsibilities. Under Section 4, we get into the definitions of what is the district road system. And again, regardless if it's 18 miles or 21 miles, that can be easily determined. The mayor indicated he received something from IDOT. We can get that in writing. We can go to the county, whatever we need to do, regardless of what it is. This agreement is saying we will maintain those, or we're going to do the heavy lifting for those roads, whatever it is. It doesn't matter whether it's 18 or 21 at this point. Under definition 2 for maintenance, the snow plowing shoulder, this is where we can identify what exactly it is that the township wants the highway or wants the village to maintain. Under item B, let's see what we have. This is actually the start date. This is when the village would begin taking over the commencement of maintaining those the roads that are currently unincorporated. Section 5, funding. This, I included the road and bridge taxes, and I understand there was a comment that we would get all the tax. That is not at all how it's written. What it's written is saying that if the village of Homer Glen was doing the full maintenance of everything, what this provided was the properties, the taxes that are levied against properties in the village of Homer Glen and in the unincorporated areas, those would come to the village. Obviously, that's not going to be the case if you're going to have a skeleton crew and you're going to do some of the minor work. So we got to figure out what the split was. Anything in the city of Lockport, the city of New Lenox, and the village of Lamont, those are not addressed in here. The village of Homer Glen is not asking for that money. That we can figure out, and I agree, we should bring everybody to the table on this agreement, because the city of Lockport, the village knows that it owes the city of Lockport money, and we plan to pay them. But I think it's a good idea to have the city of Lockport involved to figure out, from their perspective, what is going to happen with those funds. what is going to happen with the township levy for the road and bridge taxes to those residents that are in the city of Lockport. And just to make sure and clarify, the village of Homer Glen under this contract is not saying they want that money. We looked at this with the opinion that if we're maintaining the roads completely, any taxes levied against Homer Glen or Unincorporated, because we're maintaining those roads now, would come to us. So this isn't like we're trying to pull a fast one or anything of that nature. I've got highlighted in here what's the amount of the levy. We want to make sure that there's sufficient for the village maintenance. My other question right there, does the road district need to retain some of the tax revenue? So I'm actually pointing out that what is it that the township is going to need to get by? Employment, that's pretty self-explanatory. We're saying on or after the commencement date. We may employ employees. It sounds like that's not an issue anymore, that the township and the road district plans to retain those 2 employees. So we can leave that in, we can take it out, it doesn't matter, because it looks like that's already a done deal. Conveyance, again, this was written under the assumption that the village of Homer Glen was going to be doing all of the maintenance and the road work, all of the maintenance. So what we included in here was the district would no longer need that property and would transfer it to the village. This isn't something that we're going to get hung up on. Obviously, if the township, I keep saying the township, my apologies, if the road district is going to continue to have a skeleton crew and going to be doing some work, obviously you're going to need some personal property. So this is not something that the village is looking to take the property. We were doing this under the assumption and the opinion that we were taking over all of the maintenance. So again, this is going to change. And then section B on there is the personal property conveyance, actually talking about how it's going to be conveyed. Section 8, effective term and date. Basically, we're saying the 2-year term. I heard we should have at least a 3-year term. It could be a 5-year term. It doesn't really matter. Whatever we want to do, that we can work through that. Here's where items B and C under section 8. This is key, and Trustee Fialco, here's the blending that I think is the most important thing in this agreement, okay? Again, this was written under the assumption that we were taking over all of the maintenance. So section B is different. What we're saying, first of all, is that written notice of 1 year to either party to terminate the agreement. Section B was saying, if the district terminates the agreement, the district would get back that bare bones stuff that we were taking under this agreement to begin with. We thought that whatever you have right now would have been transferred because we're maintaining everything. Obviously that's going to change. What we were saying was the district, if you cancel the agreement, if you terminate it, what you get back is the stuff that you just moved over. Here's the biggie, item C. If the village terminates it, so this is the concern, this is the safety net as Trustee Baha talked about. If the village terminates the agreement, everything that Mr. Porfilio had in that IGA, whatever that added up to, you had dump trucks, you had property, you had all that stuff, everything you asked for in that IGA. If the village terminates it, that would go back to the township, the highway district. It makes the whole point, and as well as the property. That's the way I wrote it, and the reason behind that was it discourages either party to terminate the agreement. This is going to be paid, or basically I also have in there, or pay the sum of whatever we agreed to, whatever that price is to compensate for that equipment and that property. The reason for that is, you're right, what if it's 8 years from now? We've got a new mayor, you've got new trustees, and they say, you know what, to heck with the township road district, we don't want to do this anymore. We're going to terminate it. And the township road district is going, we don't have any equipment. How are we supposed to do this? You know what? It's going to be pretty darn painful for the village to terminate this agreement, because you're either going to pay a lump sum of a big amount of money, or you're going to give back all that equipment and all the property that basically that Mr. Porfilio has asked for. It's going to be painful. It's a disincentive for the village to terminate this agreement. And the point is with section B was, it was going to be a disincentive for the district to terminate the agreement, because the only thing it would be getting back is that bare bones items that we were just talking about here. So obviously we want to create, my purpose of this was to create, again, a disincentive. You want both parties to say, look, we want to continue with this relationship. We want to continue maintaining the 21 miles, the unincorporated highway district. We want to be doing it right. And we want this to go a long term. We want this to be a long contract. And if either side decides to terminate it, it should hurt. That's the point. That's the purpose of the exercise. And that's what I put in here. The miscellaneous sections in here, obviously, a lot of these are catch-alls. It's just saying that the village manager, or if it's the village president, the highway commissioner, who has the authority to sign after the proper vote. It's also stating here under C, defensive agreement. If a situation arises where somebody challenges this agreement, obviously both sides are going to be trying to defend it. We want to make sure we're in cooperation, and that if, for example, the village is the only one being sued, we want the highway commissioner to help out. Likewise, the same thing. If a highway commissioner is getting sued over this agreement in the township, the village should be helping out as well. You're in this together. Insurance and indemnification is pretty straightforward. I think both sides need to make sure you got your insurance coverage. Governing law, notices, these are all pretty standard. Looking at P and Q, remedies. Basically, either side, if you want to file a lawsuit, I mean, that's fine, to enforce the contract. And under default and breach, if somebody isn't doing what they're supposed to, you give the other side notice. They've got 30 days to cure, or at least start the cure and try to fix it. Otherwise, they're in breach, and then you can move forward. So I'm trying to think of anything else to go through. The exhibits that were attached, those were basically laying out, here's the road system for the village, our 130 some odd miles. Here's the district's road system, whether it's 18 or 21. Here's the description of the personal property that's being conveyed. Obviously, that's not going to be the case because they're going to need to maintain this for their skeleton crew. The description of the village personal property. Exhibit D, this was going to be the personal property that's transferred back to the district in the event that we terminate this agreement or something goes south. Again, that's that disincentive. Description of the village real estate. This is the real estate owned by the village that would go back to the district if it's terminated, if this agreement was terminated by the village. And then the bill of sale that relates to the property, that's not effective either if they're going to be maintaining the property. So I guess the highlight of this too, I know that there's going to be a lot of questions and tell me that I said things wrong. That's fine. I think the big thing in here is we've created a disincentive for the village to terminate it. What is going to be the disincentive for the highway district to terminate it? And then also we want to talk about the tax levy and how that affects everybody, because that's a huge issue. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
I think we're off to a good start. Not everything in there everybody's going to be agreeable with, but one of the big factors is once the road district gets down to 4 miles, that's not in there. The other thing is when we get involved in lawsuits, the way you put it together, the person or people that make money are the lawyers. Again, the taxpayer ends up paying. I would have rather seen a provision in there that has an expedited arbitration clause that basically leaves the combat between lawyers for months upon months out of the picture. So an expedited arbitration usually takes about 90 days. They're very easy to work with. I've been through them myself. So I would rather see that type of verbiage in there besides us going to bat with lawsuits and lawyers. As far as that goes, Brent Portfolio has a lot of ideas. We cannot move forward with this unless the road district commissioner agrees to the things that are going to take place. So we're going to have to move forward and be flexible here a little bit. I know we're looking at what you just read, and some of that is stuff we've been through already, and it hasn't worked up to this point. So I think maybe if everybody's in agreement, Brent has, I believe he has a punch list that maybe we can start that way and see what we're agreeable on with the man that's in charge that's going to have the final decision, whether this is acceptable or not. Let's hear what he has to say, and then we can agree or disagree as we move forward. Are you okay with that, Mayor Yukich?
We can discuss it.
Brent? Your punch list?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Rather than go through a punch list, I'd rather just address point by point what I have an issue with in the IGA drafted by council, or by
Okay.
council. Okay?
And at this point, maybe we can all follow along, and where there is an issue, we can either highlight it or redline it, so we can follow it throughout the meeting.
Okay, let's see here. On page 3, item 3. The regulatory authority of the road district will stay with the road district as long as there's a highway commissioner. We cannot give that up. That's according to state statute. So the regulatory authority word should come out of that. That's one item that I had. And in that same sentence, it says the village requires certain idle and surplus personal property from the district. What our standing on that is that the surplus, which is, of course, idle trucks and things that we could use for the skeleton crew of the road district, we would like to retain those. That's a very important part of this. That's another comment I had. On the same page, under 4AII, we had talked about changing a few words in there in terms of the scope of work for maintenance on what would be done by the skeleton crew at the district and what would be done by the village. And that's not a big deal. We can fix that. As far as 5A goes, as far as I know, the county cuts a check back to the municipalities from the tax levy. So if you want 100% of it back, that would have to be something discussed with the county to give 100% back. And that would have to be something that would work with the budget of the skeleton crew that I have. I don't know if that's something that the county can change. Correct?
No, it's by state statute. You cannot change it. Mayor Straight would be able to tell you, Ben Benson, and any other mayors were here, they'd know that you get approximately 1/2 from the county for whatever's levied in the road and bridge, and the equipment and building fund does not get split. There's still only one, but that's a small fund. But it's by state statute. You can't change it.
And I don't think we ever wanted to change it at all. I think it was a situation where we just felt if the village was handling the entire 18 miles, that whatever money that the highway commissioner received would then just be turned back over to the village. But again, that doesn't sound like it doesn't have to happen anyway.
So what we had said before, though, for what is being done by the village, Public Works would be compensated on a time and material basis. Item number 6, of course, with employment, we discussed that already, that my 2 staff will not be moving on. They will be staying with me. Item 7A. What was in Exhibit C? I don't know if I saw that.
That was, I think we were going to say, I didn't include those. That was going to be the property that you currently have. So again, that isn't going to, so 7A isn't going to apply because...
What was Exhibit C? Do you have it with you?
No, I basically outlined these, but Exhibit C was going to be what you currently have.
What's currently in the IGA is 10 feet from the side of the building.
No, I'm sorry. It was
no
property. Personal property, not real property.
Okay.
It was just the items of personal property and equipment that you have currently.
But it's irrelevant at this point.
It's irrelevant, because if you're going to be doing a maintenance or your own skeleton crew.
All right, thank you. Let's see what else here. 7B, and I'm not an attorney, obviously. I've spent a lot of time in court with other stuff, but this is something that I just looked up the other day with Mr. Balich. And you refer to Illinois Highway Code 605 ILCS 5/6-20110 to 201.10-1. And in the same Illinois Highway Code, under 605 ILCS 5/6-80310, it lays out something a little bit different, and I don't know if this was covered in the court case that Pam Myers had against the village, but in 80310, there's 3 stipulations that are in print, and I have a copy, counsel, if you want to see it. It's on my phone. 3 things have to happen to convey property from the road district to a municipality. 3 things have to happen. Number 1, it has to be declared as surplus by the road district commissioner. That's number 1. That's very important, because from what I've seen in the past, from all the notes taken from the minutes of the township meetings, Commissioner DeVivo never did that before he transferred items to the village. That was one item I saw in section 80310. The second condition that I saw in there was it has to be put up for a vote at a special meeting of the township, or is that a referendum?
Either one.
That's the second thing, and that never happened. And number 3, the transfer of the property and real estate has to be compensated for no less than 80% of the appraised value. So the $10 is a lot less than 80%. So those are 3 things that are my interpretation, I'm not an attorney, my interpretation of section 80310 that didn't make it into this draft. And that's something maybe we can have Ross discuss with Homer Glen Council.
We don't need to do it. This isn't applicable. If there's no conveyance of your property, then this would be not applicable either.
But, okay. But I think that's an important section, 80310. Nobody has talked about it yet, and
But
I think it's very important to remember that, because there is surplus equipment and real estate that we would like to retain, and we have the right to for that per that section, and that's something that should be put in the lap of the attorneys to interpret that, because I don't think it was covered in court when it was when Homer Glen was with the Pam Myers and them. That's just my thoughts on that paragraph. I'm digressing a little bit here. Item 8B was something I wanted to talk about. In order to terminate the agreement, what would have to happen? Would we have to have a vote of the township trustees, or would that be something that the road commissioner would decide, or how does that work?
That's up to you. However how does the highway commissioner enter into agreements right now? Is it a vote of the township?
Yeah, there would be a special town meeting that would have to occur, I guess. That's what has been done in the past. Of course, there hasn't been a lot of IGAs with the road district, so I'm not real up on the legalities.
No, I mean for any contract that you have with the highway as a highway commissioner, any contract that you have, how is that?
Well, I can cancel any contract.
Okay.
But I wanted to see if maybe you could put that in here,
okay,
to make it a little bit more clear, you know, because people interpret things differently, all kinds of differently.
So I want to make sure how.
So that's the same with C too. The same with C, how the village would terminate it. I don't know if you would have a majority of the board would have to, you have to vote on it, or I don't know how that would be done.
Correct. That's exactly how it would be for the village.
Okay.
So how would you prefer it for the township, of the township board?
Well, no, we have to, by statute, we're going to have to do a special town meeting, and then the board has to pass a resolution. The township has different rules, so we follow section 60 in the Illinois codes, and for doing that, we need to have a special town meeting. The same thing that I explained to everybody with the parks. We can't transfer those parks until you guys say you want them, then we have a special town meeting, then they're able to transfer. We just can't vote on it from our board. Our board votes to go ahead and do it, then we have to have a special town meeting to do it, to actually sell property or lease.
This section doesn't incorporate, it doesn't address any selling of property.
End it. We just can't terminate something like that.
Well, you were able to enter into the agreement, right?
Pardon me?
When the IGA that was approved by the township of like last month or a couple weeks ago, whatever it was that was just a vote from the township trustees, correct?
Right.
Okay. I think it would be very similar. This is simply terminating an IGA.
Can we do it by the vote of the
I believe you could. You wouldn't, because you're not transferring property at all. This is just simply saying.
Transfer, yes.
Okay, so it would be just, I couldn't.
For the agreement termination, if you could have it be a vote of the township trustees.
Very good.
Please put that in there for B. Let's see. In Exhibit C again, it says personal property conveyed under Section 7 and described in Exhibit C. Now, is that property, vehicles, equipment? Is that everything? Because Exhibit D we have a lot of exhibits going on.
Yeah.
And Exhibit D to me has what I think is correct. Exhibit D, I think, lays out, I wish we had a copy of it here.
Exhibit D was the personal property and the real property that you were seeking under your IGA. That if it was terminated.
Hold on. I want to make sure the exhibit name is correct. That's all, counsel. That's all I was. Let's see here. It's B. So let's see here.
It's not going to be the same exhibit number as the IGA.
Okay. Well, before I commit to an exhibit, I would like to see it.
Well, it's,
you know what I'm saying?
Exactly, and that's, like I said, I didn't, this was a first draft.
Okay.
To kind of walk through things.
Okay.
What we're talking about here, so item B that you just talked about, when the district, if the district decides to terminate it, what we're going to need in there, though, is because what this provided was you would get the return, that the district would have the return of what you currently have. That we incorporated, we thought we were taking care of everything, so you were going to transfer it to the village. And that if you decided you wanted to terminate it, you would receive that back. Obviously, that's not the case. So item B, we're going to have to revise that somehow to create a disincentive for the district to terminate the agreement. And that was the point of C as well. What we were looking at there is saying if the village terminated the agreement, we would have to turn around and give you all the items that you basically had talked about under your IGA, or a lump sum payment to address that, so that you would be able to do the full maintenance and everything that you're required to do.
Okay. Yeah, and the blank on item C, you know, that's going to have to be looked at to see what that would be. I'd have to talk to my guys about that and the people that provide the cost value. Let's see here. What else would I want to talk about? The miscellaneous. With the insurance, I think TORMA controls what the road district does and insures. So it's important that any of the property and vehicles and property that belongs to the road district, we will insure that. And anything that Homer Glen gets title on from the road district, they would insure that. That's all I'm trying to say there. I don't know if that's what your language says. I don't know. But that's what the intent is from us, from our side, is make sure that you have the title of it before you insure it, and that the title's not in limbo, because I think that might be the case right now. I don't know. Is that all the vehicles that are supposed to be either in the public works or in the road district are in the right spot? Because if you have people that are driving them, they can't be insured if the title's on the other side. It's something that has to be looked at immediately, and that we talked about before that could be done by the village, is make sure that there's no liability on the road district if there's people that are driving vehicles that the road district has title on that Homer Glen does not. That's important for everybody that's covered, to protect everybody, the workers too. Let's see here. I think that might be it. Yeah, and then the exhibits, of course, on page 9, we gotta work through those as well. And those are my comments. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Portfolio. Through time, the idea is to dissolve the road district. And during that time, when this process takes place and we get down beneath 4 miles, the road district can be dissolved at that point. And what I'm curious to know is maybe the plan that we have to get it down to 4 miles. Will there be an outreach to those that need to be annexed into the village to reduce those miles down to 4? or what would be the long-distance plan for the dissolving the road district and getting down to 4 miles or beneath that, and then dissolving the road district?
Yeah, obviously over time, there's going to be a lot of annexations in the township, and once it gets down to 4 miles, the road district will expire. The highway commissioner will no longer be an official. He will not be up for re-election. He will not have any powers. The road district will be completely dissolved, and what will happen is any personal property and real estate that belongs to the road district will be divided up according to the municipalities that are left of the 4 miles. There's percentages for each village that we've seen in print on who has jurisdiction over what percentage of the property of the road district. Obviously, Homer Glen would have the lion's share of it, and then Lockport would be second, and then New Lenox and Lamont have a little piece. And that's how it would be divided up once it's dissolved. And there is a procedure for dissolving it. Even though it goes down to 4 miles, it doesn't mean automatically it dissolves poof like a magician. You got to go through certain legal processes to make sure that happens, but theoretically, once it's 4 miles, it's gone.
But that is the long term.
And that's the long term, and I wanted to start the ball rolling with this new IGA, as I discussed at the last meeting, to try to go down that road. Because it's coming. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Because I know Homer Glen is growing and Lockport is growing, and it's going to happen.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, may I ask a couple questions for clarification?
Sure.
So it sounds like this still has to be discussed, but what exactly does everyone envision the Homer Highway actually taken care of with this agreement? Because if it sounds like, because the way I'm hearing it is if the village is going to take care of road reconstructions or heavy maintenance, are you guys leaving like plowing to the highway department? Do you have any idea of what exactly you'll still be doing, Brent, as the highway commissioner?
Yeah, there's a number of daily things that have to be done. I got a list I put together. Just a second. I have a slow phone. Of course, you have to have somebody answering the phone and reacting to residents that have issues, and that is something that happens all day, every day. Emails, phone calls, paperwork, monthly reports, road bids, bid openings, department meetings, entrance permits, inspections. And in the field, you have culverts, sewers, residents calls, sign repair, trash collection, dead animal removal, drain cleaning, pothole patching, shoulder stone, building maintenance, equipment preventive maintenance, ditch work, driveway asphalt, street clearing, da-da. But there's things that have to be done on a daily basis by the 2 staff that are remaining in the road district. And we said that there would be a time and material payment to the Public Works of Homer Glen to handle the snow plowing that occurs from October through March, sometimes in April, and then mowing from April through October, and also tree trimming, and any other large projects that cannot be handled by the skeleton staff of the road district. I am not going to completely close the road district until it goes down to 4 miles. But I'm going down the road where we're trying to give a break to the taxpayers.
Do you feel that, so I guess this is my question then, do you feel like this violates the spirit of the referendum that was recently passed where folks wanted to keep the Homer Highway Township Department intact? I don't think it was meant to be, yeah, you're intact, but you're basically going to trim bushes.
Yeah, I think that's something that should be in this agreement, and I did meet with Mayor Streit and Mr. Benson. The other municipalities should be made whole, just as Homer Glen is being made whole by getting their portion of the road district. I think that a lawsuit, it's not if, I think it's going to be when. If they're not included in this IGA, I believe that they're going to be lawsuits. And because of that, I think we should think about putting in a section in this IGA to pay back the portions of the road district to Lockport and the small pieces to Lamont and New Lenox. And I think that's something that should be discussed by the Homer Glen Board and by the Homer Township Board on doing something like that, because the lawsuit's going to be coming. You can't expect them to keep sitting back like that.
No, Brett,
That's just my 2 cents on it.
And that's fine, and that was actually my question. My question was, do you think doing what we're doing here, or what you're doing, does that violate the spirit of the referendum that said folks wanted to keep the highway department? I don't think they wanted to keep the highway department for a desk and a telephone. I would be under the impression that it was meant to maintain the roads and take care of them. So that was just a question, that was just an observation on my part. I guess, so getting back to how some other things though, one thing that'll be tricky when it comes to, if unincorporated Homer Township starts to diminish organically over time, right? A subdivision is annexed, the road is annexed, that makes sense. But you're eventually going to get to a place where Lockport Heights is left. And Lockport Heights is completely surrounded by the city of Lockport. And so for that, for folks to say, well, it's time to wash our hands of the township highway department, I'm not sure who's going to then take care of it. Does that mean the village would go through Lockport to get to it, to take care of, you know, an island within the city of Lockport? It's not something we'd have interest in annexing for a number of reasons, and I'm not sure Lockport Heights residents would want to be annexed. They like, you know, the way they live. They like to burn their leaves and all the things that comes with being unincorporated. I don't think they want to be part of the city either, and that's fair and that's fine. So I don't think it's a given that we will incorporate that island in the end. So how do you take care of that?
I think when you get past the 4 miles, I think the county takes over the unincorporated, right?
No, in the past, when it gets down to the 4 miles, the county tells the township board to take it over. That's what happened in Bolingbrook. So everyone thought it went to the county, but the county didn't want it, and they gave the township board one truck and said, take care of the 4 miles of road.
Okay, well that'll be a serious problem for those residents when the day comes. So I think, so then I guess as far as like Lockport's concerned, going to page 8 in the miscellaneous section.
Mayor, if I could interrupt real quick, you know, we would, the same arrangement we have with Homer Glen would be made maybe with Lockport on a T&M basis to maintain those roads. And we would have to levy a tax as part of the Homer Township tax to be able to handle that cost.
Yeah. All right. Again,
if you want,
it's not super exciting to, you know, have to take care of a whole new subdivision.
Well, it's an island within Lockport, so maybe it's affected by the water main and the sewer and everything else that feeds through it. So
sure,
we thought that might be in the same vein. Thank you.
So if I may, Eric, on page 8, section R under miscellaneous, where it says no third-party beneficiaries, I want to be clear that we need to be part of this as we move forward. And I get that same thing with New Lenox and Lamont and such. I know that they're very small. I think Steve could probably pay Lamont's share out of his pocket right now from his wallet, is like $8, but it's still, out of courtesy and respect, I think they should be incorporated, or included in this.
So 8R.
Yeah, so 8R. So then I'm actually wondering, either do we change that?
Page 8.
Page 8, okay.
Trying to think.
Do we change that, or do we just add a, you know, section W that says, that just talks about the compensation agreement? You know, basically, when this IGA is finished, however it turns out, I want to make sure that the other entities are part of this, we're signatories on this, and that is included.
Mayor, can I ask you a question? When it comes to us, the village of Homer Glen, owing you money, your town, your expectation would be to get that in one lump sum, or are you willing to work that out with the village in increments, or are you set with one way of doing it?
Sure, and I guess that's really a little bit more of something I go back to council with. I know there's some members that want it in a gold doubloons and a treasure chest, you know, and others, you know, can be more reasonable. So that's a discussion I'd go back to council with. I guess what we'd want to make sure is it's a tighter time frame. I don't want to see it go past like another board change where people are like, I don't remember this. And so.
All right. The other thing that you had mentioned between the township, when there was the referendum for the township supervisor to take over the road district, I don't think at that time the voters What they did vote is they did not want the township supervisor to take over the road district. It wasn't that they necessarily said that they wanted the road district to be maintaining everything and trimming trees. It was to keep it out of the hands of the township supervisor at that time. That was the way it was voted on, and the way from talking to everybody that everybody understood it to be. It was just so that they did not dissolve that entity, being the road district, and give it to the township supervisor.
All right, understood. Thanks for the clarification on that. Okay, I think those are my major points, but I would also ask if you guys can send this draft to my city attorney and my administrator too, so that we can make sure that we continue to be part of the workshop.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Eric, I have a couple requests. On page 5, in C, just as we're talking about how would the township terminate, how would the village terminate, so we clarify in there?
Yes, we've got that in there. Oh, sorry, you got that in there.
Village board, right?
Yeah, village board. And then for representatives in A, can you explain that a little bit further?
Basically, what this is getting at is if there were issues that came up between, like say for example, the township says, hey, we're having a problem, we need to get a snowplow over here, and those situations, that the village manager would be the one that's kind of designated as, hey, you're the point person to take care of any issues that come under this agreement, rather than contacting the mayor or the trustees to say, hey, this road needs to be plowed, for example. Hey, they didn't do a good job over here. Can we get on this? Or if there's anything regarding to, like, in addition to those notices, anything, it talks about ministerial. So, for example, if there's a notice that needs to be sent out to the road district, or likewise, if the highway commissioner needs to send something to the village, he's taking care of it. Who is it that's taking care of it for the village? Be the village manager is the one sending a notice or taking care of the day-to-day things in between the village and the highway district.
Okay, because the only thing I didn't like was unless applicable law requires. So it leaves us completely out unless, which law requires.
Okay. We can change it, the village manager upon the consent or the direction of the mayor and trustees.
So do we have any other changes or suggestions?
Well, I have one more question, George, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So when the new levy comes up for the highway department, Brent, I mean, ultimately, I know you guys didn't know what to levy this year, so you levied full. I understand the reasoning, right? We didn't really know what you guys are going to be having to deal with. As you move forward, my expectation would be that you levy for 18 miles. When that happens, I'm guessing by at least the next levy. And then it'd be interesting, now that I'm hearing that there's a lot of, of the heavy lifting gets shifted off of the township highway department, that perhaps that levy should be even less than just an 18 mile, as if you guys are maintaining the roads, it probably should reflect.
Yeah, we're working on a reduced levy. It's going to be a lot less than it was last year. I think it was almost 6 million last year, something like that. That's ridiculous. Okay, 5.9, I'm sorry. So it's going to go way down. It's going to be under $1 million.
Okay.
We're going to get it down as low as we can to make everything work.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Portfolio, are you under the understanding you'll get all the equipment back then that you have requested, and we're under the agreement that for that $1 that you would charge back to the village? Are we on that? Are we on that track to come up with that agreement where we are going to give you back the surplus on paper, and where we would then take and come up with the $1 contract, which would basically be, I know here the IGA, it says here updated every 5 years possibly, but I don't think there's any reason that we need to even probably keep it at 5 years. We could maybe do it a test for 1 year and then keep it basically where it renews itself automatically or annually. And then if for either party to cancel, both parties would, if for one reason or another, either party would not want to continue with it, we could also let that be an item that would go to an arbitrator if nobody could come to an agreement. And again, expedited arbitration, not regular arbitration. So I want to make sure that you're satisfied that you have all the equipment in case this would fall apart, that you have the equipment that you need to do the work for the township. And when that's satisfied and we can rent it back from you for the dollar, I think that's a very, very fair way to do it. I'd like other input on that if anybody's got input to that, but that is something you mentioned before, and it sounds fair to me. I mean, it's just it's paperwork, basically, correct?
Are you talking about section 7B, 7A and B, or is there something else you want to add?
No, I'm talking in the past when we have talked.
Yeah, Homer Glen Council. Something that I had mentioned a few times was, I don't know if it's in here, we can work it in here, that we do want the surplus equipment and property that was in the Exhibit D on our version of the IGA, which was a couple of weeks ago, I believe, that the Homer Glen trustees and mayor received. I don't know how long ago that was, but in our opinion, if it's surplus, it's reserve and idle. And I looked into that, and there's a lot more trucks that are in reserve or idle that I don't even want. I requested a shortened version of even the surplus. And that's something that we had mentioned, Steve and I, at the beginning of the meeting, that if we could work that list of Exhibit D items into this IGA, that's something that we've wanted all along. And you might have mentioned it in here somewhere, Council, but I would like to maybe think.
So just, okay, I just want to make sure I understand where you're coming from, is that you're going to have a skeleton crew, the village is going to take on more responsibility, and as a result, you're going to want more surplus property going over to the township?
Well, Eric, what I think is taking place is it's just paper transaction at this point, where the surplus would be built into the IGA, but the township isn't planning on using it the way I understand it. It is being leased back to us for $1. In the event that this agreement would fall apart or it went to, where either party didn't agree to continue with it, they would then get that surplus stuff that's listed in Exhibit D back with the agreement. I think that's very fair. It's not really changing anything but paperwork at this point.
That's the intent of this. That provides the disincentive for the village to.
I don't believe it lists this like he's got it for Exhibit D.
Well, I understand. That's what we needed to work through that. But there's going to be the list of property that. So first of all, to give. This isn't surplus property to the village. This is property we're going to be needing. So in terms of transferring it, hold on a second. But then, so you're wanting to give them additional property and we're going to lease it back. My point is simply that all of this property that he has listed, or the sum of whatever the amount comes out to, I can't remember. I haven't added it up in that exhibit that Mr. Profilio had. Whatever that amount is, or those leased vehicles, those equipment and that equipment, personal property and real property, that would go back to the district in the event, or the highway district, in the event that we terminated the agreement. Because until we terminate the agreement, there is no need to have, for the highway district to have those items and those surplus vehicles.
No, I don't, right, I understand that. That is not what was said. What was said is, on paper, he wants to have a backup plan that in the case that this falls apart, that equipment, and he might have to, let's say it did fall apart, he may have to increase his staff to take up that slack, but just because he has 2 people now doesn't mean that's all they would have if this fell apart. So that safety net of them having that equipment, and obviously, Brent, you want to keep in mind too that this is older equipment too. So, I mean, 10 years down the road, if it fell apart, I don't know if you've thought about that at all, but the thing is, the equipment that that he's asking for as surplus outside of the property is older equipment. And he's not asking for it back, I don't believe. What he has asked for is it to be on paper as that it's their property and we're leasing it back. And should this fall apart, then that equipment would then go back to the township so they can do their job properly.
That's what this does already.
I don't see it that way. It doesn't have the list in Exhibit D.
Because it refers to it doesn't have we can add the list in there.
As long as Mr. Portfolio is satisfied with that?
Yeah, we have to work through the exhibits.
Correct.
We have to work through the exhibits.
Okay.
But in order for the village to just simply transfer all that property back, the village would have to say, it's surplus for us. We don't have, this is surplus, this is idle equipment, we don't need it, so we're going to give it back to the highway commissioner. And then turn around and lease it back. Clearly it's not surplus because we're still needing it. That's why I said the agreement, yes, we work through the exhibits, but that exhibit will have a list of all the items that Mr. Profilio has asked for, as well as the real estate. And in the event that, as you said, it falls apart, if the village terminates it, that's almost, I don't want to say a penalty, but that's the disincentive. If the village says, we're not going through this anymore, hey, highway commissioner, we're going to break this contract, we're terminating it, clearly the highway commissioner is going to need the equipment to do the work. And then the village would turn that property over. Or the alternative is, now keep in mind, it's a year out. You have to give a year's notice in order to terminate it. The village could also choose instead that we're going to pay you a lump sum. Whatever that equipment value is right now, we could say if it was $1 million, we could say, we're terminating the agreement, here's the equipment, or here's, again, I'm not putting don't quote me on the $1 million, I'm just using that as an example. Here's the $1 million. That way next year, when you reclaim or you start doing these again yourself, you've either got the money to buy the equipment or you have the equipment in hand. That's the disincentive for the village to keep, we want to make sure that the village and the district are both maintaining this agreement. We want this to go forward for a long time. So this keeps the village from terminating the agreement.
Yeah, there's the word surplus is being thrown around a lot. So Commissioner DeVivo never really came up with a surplus list. He never officially documented one. He had an exhibit in the old IGA from last year. I don't know if he called that surplus equipment on his Exhibit D, but in my opinion, there's surplus as it is today without an IGA, and there's surplus with Homer Glen doing the heavy lifting. There's two versions of what the surplus is supposed to be stated at. So if you have a skeleton crew and what they need, it's different than if there's the skeleton crew that's doing everything for the Homer Township Road District. So the exhibits that are mentioned in this IGA, they have to be amended to make sure that the surplus that I'm claiming having Homer Glen do the heavy lifting is a little bit different than the surplus as of today. If there never is an IGA, that's something that we should have, because it was never transferred correctly the first time. But so the surplus is, people don't have a good handle on it in this room. It's something that I have to state and I have to claim and I have to write down. So, does that help?
I think that does sound fair. And that's what we're trying to work in the direction of fairness. With that said, there's been times recently you've had to borrow things where that's become a problem. In our conversation that we've had recently, you were talking about being able to possibly borrow the equipment at certain times. My idea would instead of trying to put in a request for that and getting a no answer all the time and no reason, would be to come up with one day a week that you would be agreeable to for whatever those items are, or an even odd day combination. However you would think that would work to help you do the things that you still have to do.
Yes, correct. There will be no borrowing anymore. It was I can't use that word. It wasn't good. No. It didn't work out. It was a fiasco. And it shouldn't be something that we have to deal with anyways. I'd rather say, okay, this is the bare bones that I need, and I'll be fair. I'm always fair. This is what I need. I'd like it put in there as an exhibit to be surplus. This is what I need. And I shouldn't have to explain myself. I should say, this is what I need. I'm the authority for the road district. This is it, period. And it's going to be less than what's on the list now. That was on the old Exhibit D, but it's what we need.
So in your best guess, you won't ever need to borrow any of the equipment that you'd be leasing back to the village?
There's, like I said, there's 2 surplus lists. There's one that I need now with the bare bone staff, and one if the IGA is kicked to the curb and terminated, as it says in Section 7. If it's terminated, there's another list of what I want back. It's more, because as they said, if I'm going back and doing full maintenance, I need more. If I'm doing bare bones, I need less. I'm not greedy, okay? So the Homer Glen Council and I will have to work through that, and I'll work through that with Steve and my staff.
The other question I have is, you came up with 21.6 miles, and then we've been told 18.
Yeah, I know.
The way I understand it, Will County IDOT, or Will County...
It doesn't really matter what it is, but I'll say one more time from my point of view what it is. I know the mayor called IDOT District 1, and they have an MFT list that they put out. It's what the MFT money is based on. Okay? I sat down with the map that I was provided from the county, and anything colored in white is township roads for the road district. And what I scaled off of that map was different. I'm not saying who's right and who's wrong, but anything colored in white in that damn map is not 18 miles, it's more than that.
Who would you be happy with?
I don't really care about the number of miles.
No?
I think we should provide a map. Instead of a list, we should provide a map and say anything in white is what should be represented. Don't put a number to it. Say anything in white on the map, because giving a listing, a quantitative listing, by how many miles there are, which is what I had in the last one, Exhibit B, it should be more graphical. If it's graphical, it's easier to see.
The only problem I see with that, though, sir, is the MFT funds are based on the mileage, correct?
Yes, and I had mentioned that I would like to solicit for more MFT funds with the higher mileage rate, and then IDOT would review that along with the county, and if they think my point of view is incorrect, then it goes to what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
But regardless, I think in this IGA, the map should be in there, because we're not agreeing to the number, so let the map represent what it's supposed to represent, which is what everybody is starting with, is the map. Okay. And there's one hanging in the road district office, and I think there's one hanging in the township office that we could use as an exhibit to make this easier.
Well, that definitely resolves what we need to maintain for the township, but it still doesn't establish the MTF funds and the amount that would be collected, though. So somewhere along the line between Will County IDOT and the state of Illinois.
Here's what happened when after Brent redid the mileage.
Okay.
He did it to the 4th decimal place on all the streets, and I called the county road commissioner and told him that we have a discrepancy in the miles from the motor fuel, and so then he said that he'll get with IDOT, because they have to work all this through IDOT, and it's not going to be quick. But the county said they're going to help us get the correct number for sure. And that was probably, what, 2 months ago? 2 or 3 months ago. So, but it's going to take some time.
We just need something to put in the IGA. So, Council, maybe you can say thereabouts between 18 and 21 miles or something.
There you go.
Because we don't want to wait months for this, and it doesn't really matter.
Right.
I mean, it helps with costs and setting budgets and things like that. But you just got to look on the darn map, and it's whatever's in white.
And as you said, I think the map is the best way of doing it, because you can point out, here's where this wasn't plowed. Okay, whose is this?
Because they'll say what segment of that road, because there's some streets everybody's seen on the map. It's in blips. It alternates between the Township Road District and Lockport and Homer Glen and back to the Road District. It's like you're not going to plow the street and you're going to pick the plow up and jump over 2 blocks and I'm going to put it back down and put it back. It's ridiculous. So the reason why you can't do the 18 that's hard is, are you going to do that? Are you going to have 3 plows go down the damn street and take pieces of it? Because that's my piece. That's how ridiculous it is. That's why the 18 can't be taken as a straight number. It's because of the operations and the maintenance doesn't see it that way.
I'm in agreement.
Who's going to do it?
I agree, the map is probably the
163rd
best
Street
idea.
is an example. It's got 5 different pieces to it. So So you can't just say 18, because are you gonna make both the Public Works and another municipality go down the same damn street and plow it? No, you're gonna have one of them do it and take the whole piece. And that's why the 18 doesn't make sense to me, is all these, there's even subdivisions that are like that, where they have pieces that are chopped up. So when they say 18, it's exactly 100 feet, then it's 100 feet the road district, then it's 100 feet Lockport, then it's 100 feet Homer Glen. You can't do things that way. You gotta cooperate with everybody and say, okay, this year I'm gonna do that whole street. And it's gonna be more than 18 then, because you're not gonna be skipping around. That's why the 18 doesn't make any sense to me, and it shouldn't be like that. It should be an agreement between who does what.
I agree. The map is probably the best resolution.
That kind of stuff.
To put the map into the IGA, you're able to do that, Eric, right? We're okay with that?
Yep, not a problem.
And everybody is in agreement with that? Are we all on the same page?
Yes.
All right, then we don't have to worry about that anymore. It doesn't even have to be talked about in the future.
All right, is there anything else to discuss?
I have a couple. On page 5, C, clerk Williams brought this up to me. In the event of termination of this agreement, back on this one by the village, can we add in there on the event of if there's termination by the township?
That's what B was for. Section B was,
B is on it? Okay.
B is if it's terminated by the district, and that's what we need to figure out what we need to, no offense, Brent. We need to make it hurt a little bit for the highway commissioner too, if you guys want to get out of it.
Want to take it outside?
Okay. As Vicki just said, it's in the event of termination of this agreement, and it's, okay, so the village shall have the discretion to either. That's what she's looking for. So for sure, this is going to cover and B, if they choose. It doesn't give any discretion, so it needs to have the same.
Well, because what was happening in B was the disincentive under C is if the village terminates the agreement, it's going to have to pay something. Either it pays money or it gives equipment back to the highway commissioner. If the highway commissioner terminates it, the pain is you're not getting all that equipment. You're not getting a check for $1 million or whatever the heck it is. This incentive is like, okay, maybe we put in there that if the district terminates it, the district is getting nothing back from the village.
The problem is, that if the village terminates it, then the village will have the discretion to either convey the personal property back, which we had discussed, could be 20 years old and worthless. Okay, so it's worth 0. Or they could pay the sum. Really, if the village terminates the agreement, the township should have the discretion to pay. Do they want the personal property or do they want the money?
That's an excellent point. You're right. You're absolutely right. That's a good point. Because you're right. If it's 20 years from now, you don't want this list of things that are 20 years old. So I think that. Yeah, and that's fine.
George, I know we've heard from Vicki. I was curious if Christina has anything to add that you've...
If I have permission to speak, I have a lot to say.
Go ahead. Everyone else had a chance.
First of all, does anybody remember the dollar amount that Homer Glen agreed to pay Lockport if Homer Glen was to take over? Does anybody remember that dollar amount?
Hang on, 875,000?
Yeah, that's what was included in the budget.
172,000?
Is that dollar amount going to go lower now since Homer Township is requesting for some of that property back? That would be my first question. The second question is, I hear you guys all going back and forth, but I still think there's a lot of misunderstanding here. Eric, what you're saying is, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but from what I understand, Supervisor Balich and Brent are asking for this stuff now, correct? Are you guys asking for this personal property now, or are you saying you only want it later on if something was to fall apart?
If we were not here tonight discussing this IGA, yes, I want it back. I want the surplus back today because it wasn't transferred correctly, but I'm only asking for the surplus, which is per code, the highway code that I had mentioned before, I put together a list of what I want. Now, if this IGA goes through, that list goes down. If the IGA doesn't go through tonight and it's never drafted, I want that back, yes.
What, do you know what the total of that surplus is?
Yeah, I provided numbers on that before. It was roughly...
Can you tell me what it is?
I think it was roughly 12%.
12%.
Which was in line with the portion of the miles of the road district.
Okay, because when
Approximately 12% of what we had before, so it wasn't overburdening. Again, surplus is what I think I need to take care of my roads. And 12% of the value and 12% of the roads is pretty damn close. So I don't know, a person that doesn't know anything about the operations of the road district should say that's fair.
If you're referring to me, I'm asking questions. I don't need to be talked to like a child. I'm asking questions. That's all I'm doing. And I'm asking you for a number, and so far I've heard you dance around the question. I'm just asking you what that dollar amount is. You said 12%.
It's 12%.
Okay.
I can email you the number. I don't have it with me tonight, but it's 12%.
Thank you for answering that question. The next question I have is, what does Lockport residents benefit of keeping this portion of the township going? I mean, we have board members here that are from Lockport. You're still paying into this township road district, and they still don't receive a service. So when they're paying into this township, where is their money going? Who's paying them back? Is Homer Glen now going to be back in this boat?
50% of what's taxed and paid is provided back to the taxpayers. You know that, right?
I do know that, but now is Homer Glen in that same boat? Because from what I'm hearing is we're supposed to be, we got 18 miles or 21 miles, whatever it is.
Everybody gets 50% back. That any municipality that's within the boundaries of the township, yeah.
So Homer Glen is going to continue to pay the road district, even though Homer Glen is going, or the township road district, even though Homer Glen is maintaining the roads, correct? Yes? So we're kind of like what Lockport was. I'm just asking.
I did not set up the road district. I did not make the rules from the 1800s. It is what it is. I can't change them, but that's how it's been working for 180 years. But that's not what we're here to discuss tonight. It's the IGA. If you want to go back and give me reasons why there's a road district and how they tax, that's up to the county, not up to me.
My question is, again, is Homer Glen still going to pay into the road district for the township? Yes, you're saying yes, correct?
Of course, yes.
Okay.
They will be compensated for half of the amount that they put in, yes.
So we're starting right back where we came from in the first place, and now
at a much lower amount.
Yeah, I would say that it's not entirely true. Like, for instance, if, I live on the Lockport Township side of the border, so I also pay into the Lockport Township Highway Fund, which takes care of the unincorporated roads. So we all do it, whether you like it or not. We live in Illinois, right? But the difference is, and where the dispute's always been, Christine, right?
Yes.
Is that we just had to pay a really big rate on the Homer side because we were taking care of another municipality's roads, whereas the Lockport Township roads, they're only taxing for the actual roads that they fix. So if this goes to 18 miles, that is what it should be. And the belief is, and the part of it is that, look, if I ever drive into Lockport Heights, then I'm using their roads, and so it makes sense that within our communities, that's how we pay for it.
There are a number of collector roads that run through the township that all municipal drivers use. Should I set up a toll booth on every one of them?
No.
And collect the toll? I mean, I'm just saying, the mayor's right, Christine. There's a lot of collector roads that we're responsible for that everybody uses. So you have a benefit from that. It's plowed, it's maintained, it's repaired.
Brent, I do understand that. Trust me. I've been in politics for 13 years. I understand.
Okay.
I would say the only tricky thing that you guys are going to have your number wizards work on is that if you're levying for 18 miles as a normal road district where you'd have to take care of the construction, the maintenance, and everything else, that's one thing. If you're levying for 18 miles with an IGA that says the village is going to be taking care of some of these things, then that levy probably would need to be even lower based off of just whatever it is that you're actually doing. So that'd be the only thing that I think where the numbers are going to be you know.
If I can address it, I think part of it from what Mr. Porfirio was saying and Supervisor Bowich, I think if they're going to be paying for time and materials, it still wouldn't, it's going to be lower, you're right, because they're not maintaining it, but they're still paying to have it maintained by the village. So I think that there's going to be, it won't be as low as you suggested, because there's still, technically the highway commissioner or the highway district is still going to be providing to the taxpayers. It's saying we're still providing for the maintenance, the plowing, the construction, all those things. We're still doing this. We're simply going to turn around and we're paying the village to do that work. So obviously the money still needs to be there for the village to be able to do it, and for the highway commissioner to be able to pay the village to do that.
Sure, fair enough. I guess just as long as we're doing enough 18 miles.
Yeah, the levy's going to reflect whether or not whatever the IGA, whether it's going to be signed or not signed, that will be reflected in the levy in December. I have 3.5 months to put it together. I'm working on it already. Whatever comes out of this, I'll have to tweak the budget for. But it's definitely not going to be $6 million like it was before. That was just is insane.
Okay.
So my last question would be, do we have a cost configuration, what it's going to cost the village of Homer Glen to repurchase or purchase the new items that we are needing for the road district? Do we have any of those numbers?
No. The amount of equipment and everything else that was provided before was more than enough to take care of what Homer Glen has in their 135 miles. In our 18 miles that we need, we don't have the necessary equipment. Even for the 18, well, whatever the number is, 21.6, whatever it is. We don't even have enough vehicles right now to take care of the unincorporated roads because it's sitting over in the Public Works garage. So when you say you have to buy new equipment, no. Theoretically, it's there already because what's left is 2 trucks and some hand tools, and that's it. And there's 7 trucks I know for a fact that are in reserve right now that we gave to the village. 7 that weren't used by anybody. This was provided me by Mr. DeVivo. He gave me a list before he went to the hospital, and you know what happened after that. But there's 7 trucks. Now, I don't know if there's more people that have been hired at the Public Works Department, but there should have been about 19 to 20 staff that were turned over that would be adequate to provide for that. That's my opinion.
I have one more question, if you don't mind, please. So Brent, I'm looking at the exhibit that you had provided for the Township IGA that we presented to the village. And here it says the total, this is again from the Township, the total of all values for all inventory, we have 7.7 million. So you're saying 12% of that?
Yeah. I provided an exhibit that was colored in yellow. I provided an exhibit that was...
I'm asking is for the purpose of the Mayor Straight, so he...
Yeah, I provided an exhibit that colored in yellow all the surplus equipment. I was pretty thorough about that. And there was a total amount on the last IG of what that was, and it was about 12% of the 7.8 million. Yes. Yeah, it was documented somewhere. I can find it and give it to Christina.
If I understand everything correctly, Christina had a question and it came down to surplus. The surplus is not going anywhere or back to you with this IGA, it's staying with the village. So there's nothing for the village to purchase after the IGA is complete here. It's just paper is what it is at this point, if I'm understanding correctly. So there would be nothing for the village to purchase. It would remain here just on paper. If this fell apart, it would then become surplus. It's not going to be surplus at this point. It's paper surplus that's going to remain with the village at whatever the dollar per year or whatever you're going to charge the village. So therefore, as far as I understand it, there is no surplus if this IGA is passed. Is that correct, Mr. Porfirio?
That's the confusing part that I'm trying to say, and I said maybe it's just me that I don't understand.
And that's why I was trying to clarify for myself also.
I think what we're going to be able to do is...
Brent?
I'm going through this one more time.
Well, let me make sure, if I could, I think he's answered several times and it's still confusing. I want to just clarify, maybe, and Brent, if you can agree with me, because I'm going to be drafting this. It's simply the situation where he said, if there's no IGA, he wants the property that he had requested, he wanted that back. But if we have an IGA, he doesn't want all of that property back. He doesn't need it all for a skeleton crew.
Right, so at that point, there's no surplus.
Correct, and so what we're going to have here is, we're going to have an exhibit in here that reflects the property that he's currently keeping.
Right.
If the IGA is in effect, in terms of what he needs for a skeleton crew. Now, there's going to be another exhibit in here that would reflect more property that would be transferred to him in the event, or a monetary amount that would be transferred to him in the event that the village terminates the agreement.
But there would be no surplus to repurchase that the village would be losing, is what the point is.
Correct. Unless we terminate it. If we terminated the agreement and said, here you go, Brent, we're going to give you all this equipment back, we're probably going to, the village is probably going to need some equipment and we're going to have to repurchase things. But as it stands right now, there isn't a situation where the village is going to need to purchase new equipment to replace what it's giving Brent. That wouldn't. Thank you.
I guess the confusion was you were saying something along the lines of, we were leasing it back. That was the question I'm having. What are we leasing back?
We aren't at this.
We're not doing that, so there's no leasing in this.
Correct, there's a disincentive, correct. The IGA.
Okay, because I just heard leasing a couple of times, so I wanted to understand what that was for.
That was an idea that was out there, I don't,
That is not what you had in mind?
See where I'm saying the confusion's coming in?
He's waiting for you to give him an answer. You want to give him an answer so we can end some of this?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rinse and repeat, okay. One more time. Okay. So surplus, as of today, is listed down on a piece of paper on Exhibit D that was presented in the IGA a couple weeks ago, that was provided to the Homer Glen and Homer Township boards. That was a listing of stuff that was surplus, that the highway commissioner is supposed to be the only one that claims what's surplus. Everybody else has got their own ideas on what they think is surplus. Ultimately, I'm the one who discusses and states and lists the surplus. So the surplus today is different than the surplus that there would be after the IGA is signed. We all agree to that, right? Everybody knows that. Because there's less scope of work. So if you have less scope of work, you have less equipment and everything else that you need, period. That's almost common sense. So the surplus that goes with this IGA would be the one that, first of all, for the active IGA, would be a culled list, a reduced list of surplus, knowing that the heavy lifting will be done by the village. Now, there's another list that if there's a termination of the agreement on what I want back, that's the full list of the Exhibit D from 2 weeks ago. It's pretty much, that's what I want in here. The termination is very important, and it makes me nervous because if the village doesn't uphold their end of the agreement and I'm forced to terminate it, I don't want to be burned by it. You know what I'm saying? And vice versa. You know what I'm saying? That's the part of it that I hope we never reach that point, that this works and it's going to be around for a long time. And taxpayers will be paying less and less every year. That's what we're trying to do here. So there's two surplus lists, the one today and what I want back if there's a termination, and the other one that's required when the scope of work is reduced. And I'll be providing those to the council, Homer Glen Council. Okay?
I do have one more question. Going on what Brent had talked about was the page 8Q, the default and breach. If you look at more into layman's terms as to, okay, the village is not upholding their agreement, what is really the remedy for the road commissioner or for the township for something like that?
in terms of not upholding an agreement, for example,
Let's
with,
say the streets are not plowed like they should be.
What letter, Vicki?
It's Q on page 8. I know, you're talking about written notice, but really, if we do need to, break this agreement due to a default or breach, really, it seems very vague.
well, a default. So for example, if the village, like you said, it didn't plow a street or if it isn't doing its job, the highway commissioner would notify, or the township, generally the highway commissioner is going to notify the village and say, hey, this wasn't done properly, or this is wrong, or you haven't done A, B, or C, whatever it is, you haven't maintained it, you need to get it fixed. So the village has 30 days to either, when I say cure, means to fix the issue, or at least to begin fixing the issue, because sometimes it might be something where it might be something that's going to take longer than 30 days, but as long as they're starting to do it. And the whole purpose of that is to make sure that, hey, you're putting us on notice that, hey, this needs to be cured, this needs to be taken care of, and gives the village the time to take care of it.
I'm wondering if that 30 days is flexible for an emergency situation, where there's a snowfall where you can't put enough people on it, and we might have to hire somebody temporary or something. Some days, 30 days, that could be in the middle of the winter. And if we wait 30 days, what's going to happen 4 or 5 times if there's no plowing done, or there's certain streets that are missed or something? It's probably not going to happen, but as a fail-safe, can that 30 days be changed if it's an emergency situation?
Yeah, I think
it's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yep, that's reasonable. We can put in there, in the event of an emergency situation, it's got to be within 24 hours or something along those lines.
Yes.
Or sooner, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think 24 hours is at least reasonable. Like, hey, we're giving you notice, it's got to be done, and
okay. Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, did you get all your questions answered? Okay, does anyone have any other questions or comments?
So just to recap, obviously, then, just before we adjourn, Mr. Porfilio and I will get together, obviously via email. We're going to be going back and forth in terms of getting the exhibits and the list of exhibits and everything related to that to address. And obviously, there'll be a new draft of this agreement that'll be circulated after I have a chance to speak with him and we get it ironed out. So,
Okay.
thank you all for your time as well.
All right,
Thank you.
I need a motion to adjourn. All in favor? All opposed?
I guess so.
Rose, thank you for staying as long as you did. Get some sleep. We know you got something going tomorrow.
Mr. Bailey, you need to.
Good luck, Rose.
All right, God bless. Motion for someone from the township to adjourn? Okay, we have,
Yeah. Did you? We're actually getting a township. They've moved. Obviously, you had a meeting going on here too, so they motioned in a second to adjourn. So.
Joint meeting second Tuesday.
Hi, Rose. Hi, Rosie.
That was just a robot. That was just a robot.
Oh, okay.
That's what Tony was like. I wanted to kind of walk through it first to kind of like, this is this is the people. And yeah, and this is kind of some of the probably.
Do you have my work email? Yeah. Do you have my work email?
Let me get it.
Yeah. I don't have a card on it.
That's okay. I'll write this out here.
It's BA work.
Hey Dale, how you doing?
Hey, my man, how are you?
I'm trying to live the dream. It ain't working.
Yeah, I saw you called and missed your call. Sorry about that.
Ah, don't worry about it. Don't worry
said
about
for
it.
sure I wanted to get back to you. I'm glad I got you.
Yeah, I gotta see if you, a while back, Frankfurt Township made a deal where they were a sanctuary